Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this career panel. This career panel is on sustainable STEM careers. And my name is Anita. I am the National Field Manager here at NWF, and I manage a program called EcoGreen. And so this is a part of a collaboration between the EcoGreen program, the EcoLeaders program, and of course the Youth Advisory Council. So we appreciate your presence here today. All right. So the solutions that address the sustainability issues facing our planet. That's what we're here to talk about today. From climate mitigation and adaptation to habitat and biodiversity loss, addressing environmental injustices, and cleaning up hazardous waste require folks in all career sectors. And positions to work together. A vital piece of the puzzle is filled by those working in the sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. Today, we will be talking to 3 green STEM professionals about their career path and their advice to high school students, college students, and young professionals. We're going to begin by introducing the speakers and then ask them each to share an overview of their career path, how they got to where they are now, what kind of work they do, and what advice that they have for today's students. And for young people who are considering careers in sustainable STEM. All right, so we are going to get started with Tina. So welcome, Tina. Tina Burry has over 27 years of experience leading various environmental and sustainability programs. She graduated from Michigan State University with a Bachelor of Science degree in geology. Upon graduation, Tina worked for a large global consulting company working on environmental and sustainability issues for various industries, including automotive, oil and gas, and power generation. In 2015, Tina joined General Motors, where she has had several roles, including environmental manager, overseeing compliance activities for one of GM's large manufacturing complexes located in Michigan, manager for her GM's resource and chemical management programs, and her current role as the manager for circular economy, where she leads GM's global strategy to eliminate waste in GM's products and operations and promote biodiversity by protecting natural habitats and prioritizing the conservation of wildlife at our facilities. So welcome, Tina, and I will hand it off to you.
Thanks, Anita. Thank you, everyone. All right, so bear with me. I'm not typically a Zoom person, so I'm going to see if I can make this whole share my screen thing work. Okay, let me know if you are seeing my screen. Let me see. Okay. All right. Are you seeing the screen? Okay, thanks, David. I saw you. Okay, thanks. All right, so let me put this in. All right, so as Anita mentioned, so I am maybe a little bit longer in my career. So I'd like to say that I knew from the beginning that I wanted to pursue a career in sustainability, but when I was looking at opportunities and going to college, sustainability was not actually an area that you could major in. So, so for any of you who are unsure what you want to do from a college degree perspective, I hope my story will hopefully, I think, reassure you. So I went in not necessarily knowing what I wanted to do. I knew that I liked science, and I really wanted to do something that had meaning for me, that aligned with my values. So I was in an introductory earth science class my sophomore year of college, and had the pleasure of meeting a professor. His name was Dr. Robert Long at Michigan State. And he shared some of his research that he was doing in the Great Lakes around heavy metals, and was really able to connect it, the um, the behaviors, the human impact to environmental consequences. So it was really the first time that someone had put that into context for me, where I could actually see firsthand how some of the things that we did in our day-to-day activities would negatively impact the environment. And then it was because it was the Great Lakes, like that's in my own backyard. So it was very familiar to me. So I introduced myself to him, and I'm like, how can I get more involved? Like it really resonated with me. And he connected me through his current master's and PhD students, and really got me connected into his laboratory. I mean, I was out there doing field collection, sample collection, analyses. And it was just really through me being able to express my interest and kind of put myself out there. And it just asked the question, like, how can I get involved? And then that's really what set me on the path to where I am today. So, I have this little visual. So I attended Michigan State from 1990 to 1996. I actually stayed on and did master's work there. The little image down there is a picture of a submersible, a submarine. So I was actually able to go down to the bottom of Lake Superior and collect sediment samples as part of that opportunity. When I graduated from Michigan State with my geology degree, I, like you, I wanted to find a career. I wanted to go apply the information that I had learned. So I was fortunate enough to get a job with an environmental consulting firm. My first assignment was working in Flint, Michigan, actually at General Motors. Now, I was not employed by General Motors. I was a consultant working on a project for General Motors. So my first day on the job, I was assigned to their manufacturing facility in Flint. And I walked in. It's the first time I had ever been in an automotive manufacturing setting. And let me tell you, it is, if you've never seen it, it is absolutely amazing. So you think about this is now probably 20, I'm going to start dating myself. Like we're talking like 25 years ago. And so you think about how much it's changed since then. But I mean, the automation, the technology, the people, the complexity of the operations was fascinating to me. And then there was so much opportunity as well. So really, I felt like this was boots on the ground, my opportunity to make a meaningful impact, and how can I make this operation better, so more environmentally friendly. So I worked in things like permitting, I worked in reporting, I did environmental plans, emergency response plans. So while I started out, my first project was with GM. I did several projects for lots of different types of companies. So as Anita mentioned, I did work with automotive, I did work with oil and gas, I did work with power generation all throughout the United States. So it was really just my willingness to be curious, to continue to learn, and really try to apply, always looking for opportunities to say, how can I take this information and what I'm learning and help the client, the customer, make their operations better, so more environmentally friendly. So I got married in 1998. We started our family. I have two lovely daughters now who are themselves pursuing their careers, looking for their career paths right now in college. In 2015, I decided consulting, I really had done everything I wanted to do in the consulting space, and an opportunity came up for me to apply and join General Motors as a direct employee. And I really do want to say I specifically chose General Motors at this stage in my career. So I'd had an opportunity to work with a lot of different types of companies, and they all have their own unique cultures and their own behaviors. And what I really liked about General Motors was their commitment to environmental compliance, their commitment to sustainability, and then their culture around that. Like they really were, and they still do want to be a leader in this space, and through their commitments and through the way they apply resources. So I really wanted to be part of that again. So I was fortunate enough to get hired in 2015. At that point, I was supporting some of their large global environmental data systems and compliance reporting was the job I was hired into. But then since I've hired into GM, this is my 5th job assignment. So I've done several different rotations. So I think one of the things I want individuals to take away from this opportunity is like, think about your career as a journey, not a destination. Continue to look for those opportunities to grow and learn and try new things. So since I've been at GM, I started out doing data management, compliance reporting. I went back into manufacturing again because I love the operations. I love the pace and the work in that space. And so I worked again in the Flint area for about 3.5 years, working on several different activities there. I went through COVID at that time. So I was working in the manufacturing sites during COVID. We went through a strike. We worked through a big construction project and a launch. So it really taught me a lot about the business aspect and how do we make, through all different types of business activities, how do we make it sustainable? I then stepped into a role where I was a business planner. I really enjoyed that because that gave me visibility into the financial aspects of the company and how to apply that in my space. And then today what I'm doing is I'm managing some of our programs, our global sustainability programs around zero waste and nature. And then what I have here, like when you look at the picture on the screen, the far right, it's a little bit small, but what that is a giant pile of automotive shredder residue. So when you think about like what happens to your vehicle at the end of its life cycle, if any of you have ever been in an accident and had some damage to your car, like something has to happen to that damaged part, or sometimes the car is totaled and it needs to be managed appropriately. But a lot of the vehicle is not recyclable. And so one of the things I'm working on today is how, as a company, can we make our product more sustainable by choosing the right materials in terms of how we design it and how we engineer it so that less of it goes to the landfill at end of life. So that's kind of what I'm doing today. What a day looks like for me. I work in the strategy part of the company right now. I worked in operations for most of my career, which again, I liked the different pace, definitely more hands-on and tactical in terms of what we're doing. In the strategy space, this is stuff that's like long-term. These are the things like, you're not going to see the results of these for like 5 to 10 years down the road. And there's no roadmap to get there. Like we are developing the roadmap as we go. So this is the long-term planning. I probably spend a significant part of my day working on our sustainability roadmap. And then there's a lot of evaluation of risks to it. So like how are the markets trending? Like what's going to impact our ability to achieve our goals? And then how are we performing against other companies? So we do a lot of benchmarking in that space. And then I spend quite a bit of time communicating performance with our stakeholders, both internal and external. So we have internal stakeholders, so the people within the company that we need to collaborate with. We need everybody in if we're going to achieve our goals. So it's making sure they understand what we're trying to do and how they are a part of that. And then the other pieces are external stakeholders. So those are our customers, those are our investors, those are the communities in which we build our products. So we want to make sure that we are communicating and sharing the work that we're doing with all of our external stakeholders as well. Beyond just the kind of the day-to-day activities and my tasks, I like to also coach and mentor others. So I've got the people on my team, but we've got interns that work with us throughout the summer. I actually had a high school student who was with me for the her academic year. So we do a work study program. So I really enjoy trying to coach and mentor others as they're trying to learn about what they want to do from a career perspective. And then in my free time, I'm into anything outdoorsy. I do run for fitness, also for like mental health. Physical activity helps me clear my mind. I do a lot of yoga. I love to travel. I have not been able to do as much traveling over the past couple of years as I would have liked. Part of it is because right now my youngest daughter is doing a study abroad in Australia. So some of my vacation funds have gone to support her travel abroad. So, and then I really do enjoy spending time with family and friends, hosting and attending activities. So very, very social, like to get out there and be with people. And then just some words of advice. The thing I'm really thinking about right now that has been impactful is just the power of a single individual. And what I want to share with you is just a story that just came up recently. So at the Global Technical Center, we just reintroduced bees into beehives at our Global Technical Center. We had them before COVID, but then with COVID and the shutdown, that we did not return to the office right away. We had to relocate those beehives, and so for about 5 years, we did not have them at our location. And it was really the power of one individual who I can help connect it. I can write the contract. I can fund it. But what I need is a person who is passionate enough to actually go out and make the work happen. And it was one individual who worked tirelessly to get all of the right people together, to get the project approved, to get legal and our security and our facilities team and our medical team, everybody involved to work through all of the questions and concerns, and then really get the contract issued so that we could put 2 beehives in our community. So that happened on Friday. So what I want to you all to walk away with from that is that even if for some reason, like, sustainability doesn't have to necessarily be something that you do day to day for a living to earn your paycheck. Sustainability can be something that you do from your existing space. So this individual worked in our purchasing team. She was not a sustainability team member. She works in our global purchasing department, but she was so passionate about this that she was able to go out and make this happen. So really, I'm really just reflecting on it. It really just takes one individual with the right passion and to improve the sustainability within their space. So some other words of advice: just be curious and do the things you love. Like, learning is more than just knowledge. You really need to go out and do some things, like go out and apply the information that you've learned, and then work through it. So we don't expect you to have all the answers, but be open to feedback and growth. So challenge yourself to get into some uncomfortable situations. Put yourself into situations where it's going to challenge you and stretch you, and be okay. So you don't have to succeed. And sometimes the best way to learn is by not succeeding. All right. And just some pictures about me and what I like to do in my free time. So that's me and my family. Again, running, hiking, and then I do coach girls on the run through the YMCA in my free time. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. We appreciate that and all that you've shared. Up next, we're going to hear from Jason Harris. Jason Harris is a passionate design manager and structural and civil engineer at General Motors, with over 2 decades of experience delivering complex, large-scale construction projects across North America. At GM, Jason leads multidisciplinary teams on high-profile initiatives, including next-generation battery cell plants, the transformation of Factory Zero, GM's first all-electric vehicle assembly plant, and the Global Technical Center campus transformation. Jason holds a Master of Science in Program and Project Management from the University of Michigan Dearborn, as well as a Master of Science in Structural Engineering and a Bachelor of Science in Civil and Environmental Engineering from Wayne State University. He will soon begin sharing his expertise with the next generation as an adjunct professor at Wayne State University, where he will be teaching lean construction management. So welcome, Jason, and I will pass it to you.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I don't know about you, but I want to be like Tina when I grow up. Pretty awesome story, Tina. Thank you for that. So I'm going to try to do the same thing and share. Let me know if the presentation's coming through good. All right, great. Well, this is me on a slide, and similar to Tina, if I think about when I was in high school, trying to navigate the next chapter in my life, I'll be honest, I really didn't know what career fit my passion and skill sets. I always had a general interest in math and science. I don't think the term STEM was used as prominently back then, but I think because of the interest I displayed, what I do recall as a really pivotal moment for me was my high school chemistry teacher just pulled me aside one day and said, "Hey, have you decided what you're going to do after graduating?" And this was, I think, in junior year, so I think he was just kind of planting the seed and said, "I think you need to be an engineer." And I don't think I really ever made that determination on my own prior to that, but I took that advice to heart, and really what it did was a catalyst that set me on the path that I'm now on, because of that one individual, and really others around me that encouraged me, inspired me to pursue a career. But even at that point, I did not have a clear vision of what that really meant and where that would take me. So as I began thinking about college and where to go, I wanted to find a school that had a great engineering program. And that led me to Wayne State as a great local school. Was able to stay home near the family, but also the program that they offered met all the needs that I was looking for at the time. But to be honest, I originally applied as a mechanical engineer. I once again was still trying to really tap into what was driving my passion, and quickly after a semester or two, I realized that I loved construction. I love nature. And that was something that always resonated with me, and began to talk to some of the advisors at school, and they really pointed me to the civil and environmental engineering program. And that was really the biggest shift, that set the trajectory of my career, changing from, the original mechanical engineering path to civil and environmental engineering path. And I only share that to say, you're never going to have it perfect the first time, and seeking advice and guidance from others is really a great start. It just we're always in this continual self-discovery. Even at my point in life, I'm still there. So just listen to the advice of those around, and you'll find it'll guide you down unique paths. So I went to Wayne State with that passion, trying to find where I could have an impact in society. What really drove me to civil and environmental engineering, the core being I love nature, I love construction, was I saw it as an opportunity to really provide something for humanity in the sense of the built environment, right? So if you think about civil and environmental engineering, it covers really all of the built environment that everybody, either appreciates or maybe takes for granted on a day-to-day basis as they drive to work, as they, fill up a pot to make dinner, or use use a restroom facility, and or they're in a building not thinking about their safety because somebody was looking out for their best interest, right? And something drove me about that to be developing something for people to enjoy and perform whatever they needed to in life and feel safe. And I just felt construction is just one of those industries that is always going to be needed and be continually developing. So I continued to pursue the undergraduate in civil and environmental engineering, but as I was going through, I became very interested in structural engineering, which is the building side of the program, and stayed on through a master's degree in structural engineering, and started my career right after my undergraduate, as I was finishing my master's degree in the first year or two of my career, and started out in consulting, which was a really great opportunity for me to explore where I wanted to land in the profession. So in consulting, I had the opportunity to, explore how buildings were built, how they were, deteriorating and failed. So there was a lot of opportunity for me to get into the field and do inspection and investigations, but also news working in me
Jason, I think you froze up a bit.
early exposure to, but I
see you now.
Can
Sorry,
you hear me?
Yeah,
You
I can
can?
hear you now. Missed
Yeah.
about a minute.
Yeah, no. Where did I leave off? I apologize. Are we now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah. So that led me to wanting to do more in the full.
Sorry, you're freezing up again. You might want to try turning off your camera, see if that might help the
Okay. I apologize. Must be my internet connection.
It happens all the time. No worries.
Okay. All right. So I'll keep going. So the path led me to a design engineering firm where I got the opportunity to do the full scale structural engineering design. But as I was doing that, it was very focused on just that one discipline, and I was inspired to want to have an involvement in really the whole development of a project in the site, and that's what led me to pursue more of a focus in project and program management, which I started to do while at the design firm. I also pursued a second master's in that. And right around that same time as I was making that shift and transition, I was approached by General Motors with this really great opportunity that started to align with where I felt drawn in my career. So, brought me to really what I've been doing now for the last 14 years at General Motors as a design manager. And what that ultimately means is, I get the unique opportunity to define the scope and the technical requirements for our sites and developments, and interface with all of the engineers and architects that go into developing a site and building, as well as the contractors, building the site. So it's led me into this current role, which very rewarding, gives me the opportunity to think about environmental passions in containment and stormwater management, but also how we think about sustainability in terms of the materials that we use, how we're constructing, even the efficiency of the design, so we're using less materials. So I have another slide I can cover that. My passion's very similar to Tina's. I love spending time with my family, but being outdoors is really where we love to be, traveling around the country, visiting many of the national parks. Anything to get outside is really something that inspires me to be in nature, to appreciate that environment, and just thinking about why it's important for us all to do our part in protecting that. So wanted to share, for those who might not know, civil and environmental engineering, there's a lot of relationships between the two. And in my education and career path, I've had the opportunity to really span the gap between the two. As I mentioned, I had a heavy focus in structural engineering, but early on in consulting, I had an opportunity to do geotechnical engineering with a lot of substructure design for utility systems and transportation design, doing site layouts and parking lots and roadways. Spent some time while I was in college as a research assistant doing traffic and transportation. But then as I moved on into my current role at General Motors, every single one of our sites involves some aspect of these systems within civil and environmental engineering. And yes, we are building something in the natural environment, but it has an intended purpose, and we can do it thoughtfully and respectfully to the environment and the overall climate considerations. So an example of a project I get an opportunity to work on and lead is, this is one of our newest battery cell manufacturing facilities. And, right there, I get an opportunity to support the advancement of a technology that has an ultimate goal of reducing emissions and addressing that climate change objective. But by doing that, I also respect that, we're changing a landscape, we're building something in a space, and there's thoughtful ways of doing that. So in this specific, project, almost 3 million square foot new facility, obviously a lot of built environment, but we have storm detention ponds that were very thoughtfully done so that the post-construction runoff was not greater than the pre-construction runoff. We were balancing the site, so a lot of earth was being moved, but we kept all of that earth on site to not have to ship it off. There was a lot of consideration around some of the materials that are used in the manufacturing process that need to, be contained and protect the environment. So there is wastewater that needs to be protected. Obviously, roadways are needed to bring materials and people to and from these sites. So that, all gets built in very thoughtfully. There is air emissions, air quality that is heavily regulated for the right reasons, but we support that in optimizing the design, but also working with our environmental engineers to ensure that we are providing all of the details to the agencies. And then we work with our energy and utility teams on, ensuring that we are operating with renewable energies on our sites. So we get to coordinate all of that. So from a career perspective, when I get an opportunity to coach and mentor others, and this diagram is what comes to mind for me always, and it doesn't always perfectly align, but what I could say is, as you continue to have your own self-reflection and continue down your path, this to me is always a good sense check of are you really in the right place? And what you notice here is salary is not one of the drivers, but it's where do you really feel a passion or a purpose, right? And for me at General Motors, our commitment to the environment and sustainability, climate change, to the people, it's to me, I can see, that drives me to show up every day. Obviously, the skills that comes through education, that comes through experience, that comes through mentorship with others, and that continues to grow. And as you take on new roles and assignments, it's going to broaden even further. And then impact is thinking about what you do at the end of the day. What is the impact? Yes, you could be helping a company be profitable, but ultimately, what are you doing for the world as a whole, the individuals you interface with, and if you can find yourself with some proximity to this overlap, it's a safe space to be in, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. It's just this is what drives me and what I come back to very frequently. So sorry about the technical difficulties. I hope the rest of that came through, but appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that, and all that you've shared. And we have our last panelist here, our own Dr. Simone Stewart from National Wildlife Federation. Dr. Simone Stewart is the Senior Industrial Policy Specialist for Climate and Energy at the National Wildlife Federation, working on a portfolio that includes carbon capture, utilization and storage, carbon dioxide removal technologies, hydrogen, and other strategies to decarbonize difficult to abate sectors like industry. Simone joined NWF in 2021 after receiving her Ph.D. in mechanical engineering from the University of California, Santa Barbara, where she was a National Science Foundation graduate research fellow studying fluid mechanics, as well as a graduate assistant for the Bloom Center on Poverty, Inequality, and Democracy. So welcome, Simone, and I will pass it to you.
Thanks, Anita, and hi, everyone. I hope you can see my slides. I had to switch the screens. I'm hooked up to my monitor, so but yeah, I'll go through a couple of slides, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions from everyone. So as Anita said, my name is Simone Stewart, and I work with Anita and David at NWF. I'm based in DC, and I've been at the National Wildlife Federation now for July will be my 4th year anniversary. So it all happens pretty fast. But I'm from kind of all over, but I grew up between Texas and Missouri. I went to undergrad in Missouri at a really tiny liberal arts college, like 1,200 total students. And I studied physics there for 4 years, and I got really interested in the environment there, and decided to go to graduate school. And so I'll talk kind of more from the graduate school on. And so this is kind of the trajectory that my work has been on. So I did graduate school, as Anita said, at the University of California, Santa Barbara, which is based in Santa Barbara, California, pretty obvious. And I stayed there for 5 years where I did my PhD in mechanical engineering. So I switched from undergrad in physics to mechanical engineering. And I was a graduate assistant at one of our centers on campus there. And then after that, I transitioned to my current job at the National Wildlife Federation. And then I can tell you guys a little bit about my current job because it is a very interesting intersection between being an engineer and having a science background and also working in policy and working alongside kind of the Hill and a lot of other NGOs and different organizations that care about climate and all are kind of contributing in their own way to shape the policy space. So I won't go over my dissertation with you. I don't even like thinking about it anymore. But essentially, the large scale application to what I was studying in my PhD can be applied to this technology called direct air capture. And so the concept behind direct air capture is that there is an excess of CO2 in our atmosphere that has been building since the Industrial Revolution. So we think about our cars, our buildings, all of the ways that we emit CO2 in our lives has just been kind of building up because the sinks that normally absorb CO2, like our forests, our grasslands, our oceans, are all really overwhelmed. So that excess CO2 is what contributes to global warming, which is why the planet is getting hotter. We're experiencing more natural disasters, and it's harder to conserve our natural environment. So this concept is essentially a giant vacuum that sucks air in through one side, harvests the CO2, and then releases the air that is depleted of CO2 on the other side. So I was really interested in climate, thinking about the intersections of climate and technology when I was in graduate school, and really looking kind of towards an innovative future. And so that was really what my work was focused on in my PhD in engineering. When I was at the Blum Center for Poverty, Inequality, and Democracy, I worked there for the last 2 years of my PhD out of the full 5 years. I actually took this job, which was mostly taken by history, poli-sci students, sociology students, because as an engineer, I felt in my engineering programming, I wasn't talking enough about the way that engineers interact with society. So I had a lot of these social issues that were really important to me as a Black woman who was getting a PhD and was the only one when I started in the entire College of Engineering at UCSB. There weren't a lot of people who looked like me that were pursuing these types of degrees. So I was really interested in concepts of environmental justice and social justice. And so I took on this job at our Center for Poverty, Inequality, and Democracy because I felt like that other side of me was being fulfilled while I was kind of learning the engineering side. And I think it's an unfortunate reality that the engineering side wasn't doing enough of this work. I was always kind of told, well, that's not our job. That's the job of political scientists and sociologists. But as I told my boss when I interviewed for the Democracy Center, to be an engineer is to create things for society, and you have to understand the society that you're building for in order to, I think, build responsible and good tools. So this is an example of some of the work that I did while I was there. We did a People's Guide to the Green New Deal, so that was kind of an intersection with climate and what I was doing in my engineering degree. We were really focused on democracy because it was during the 2016 election when I was there. So we were kind of trying to think about what does it take to mobilize young people, especially because we were working on a college campus. So we talked about activism for safe democracy, inclusive democracy. It was during the COVID-19 pandemic. I said 2016, 2020. I was during the COVID-19 pandemic. So there were a lot of kind of social issues at this time that were really kind of bubbling over. And so as an engineer who was also interested in society, I took on this other job. So I did a lot around environmental injustice and thinking about marginalized communities. And so ultimately, at the end of the 5 years, I had the opportunity to either take a postdoc at a national lab that was based in Boulder to kind of continue the engineering research that I was doing, or I applied for the job I currently have at NWF to kind of continue working at this interesting intersection between technology and climate and policy and democracy. And so the spoiler alert is that I'm at NWF. So I took that job instead of the postdoc. And so I've been at NWF, like I said, for 4 years, and I'm continuing work that is under the umbrella of what we call carbon management. So I tell people the OG kind of carbon management is what NWF and organizations like ours have been doing for a very long time. Green conservation. The trees and forests of our world absorb that CO2 naturally, but it's not happening fast enough. They're at risk for climate disaster. So what are ways that we can integrate these technologies like direct air capture that I talked about into our society to meet the needs of marginalized communities and communities all over the world? So this is around the work that I do at NWF. So I have an example of some of the reports that I've worked on. So thinking about air quality, thinking about storing CO2 underground, which is typically what happens after you capture it, and thinking about how the public is engaging with these ideas. Telling someone we can suck CO2 out of the atmosphere is like something that you think you hear in a sci-fi movie, right? But it's stuff that we actually have the technology and capability to do. So when we learn about these technologies and how they could be integrated into society, it's important to talk to the public, to do polling, to figure out what people's thoughts and feelings are around this work. And then I've also got a couple of renderings that you saw in the opening slide. I worked with an architecture design firm and another partner to kind of envision what a future where we have these technologies might look like. So people usually ask me, like, what is a day in the life of an industrial policy specialist? And I have to say, over the 4 years that I've worked at NWF, there is no identical day. I think that's probably true for a lot of people that work at NWF, especially now when the policy climate is very kind of fragile. Lots of things are changing really, really rapidly. So just trying to keep up to date on what's going on alone is its own feat. But I have some pictures here. Most of these are speaking engagements. So I've gotten to travel all over. I've gotten to go to South by Southwest, which started as a music festival and now is an educational opportunity to present. The picture in the middle of me standing by the direct air capture was taken in Iceland at a facility. I've spoken in the bottom right corner. This was in Switzerland at a conference that built the DAC in Iceland. The GHGT is like a technical conference that I got to go to in Calgary, Canada. So I've gotten to travel all over to talk about policy, to talk about technology. And I've gotten to be a part of some very cool programs and meet a lot of really amazing people. And so I would say that, you know, my advice for people is to follow your gut, because that's exactly what I did. I felt like research wasn't enough. And so I pursued that other job in grad school. And when I had this kind of fork in the road, I pursued the job that I knew would allow me to do both things that I was interested in. And I feel very strongly about being able to show up authentically as who you are. So you can see, like, I wear lots of bright colors, like I have cowboy boots on in the picture in Canada. I have tattoos. So like, I wanted to be able to be in a place where I felt comfortable showing up as my authentic self every day at work. And I felt like I was surrounded by people who were focused on my contributions and a little bit less about the outside. So I love that NWF is a place where I really get to be myself and do a lot of really cool things in addition to that. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Simone. Appreciate you running through all of that in the brief time that you shared with us. All right, so I believe what we're going to do next is we're going to open it up for questions. Again, a thank you to Tina and Jason and Simone for sharing all of that out. So thank you very much. So we'll give some time and space for some questions. If any folks from the Youth Advisory Council have questions for our speakers.
Oh wait, so you can go first because you raised your hand. I'll raise my hand.
Okay, it was a split second. Yeah, no. One thing, this is more directed to Dr. Stewart specifically. I'm really curious about the Iceland stuff. I actually just changed my background to a view of Thorsmörk in Iceland. I studied abroad there during my bachelor's, my most recent degree. And I actually saw some carbon capture stuff. That's eloquent of me. We toured one of the geothermal plants there, Hellisheiði, and saw that the company Carbfix is not direct air capture from what I understood. It's capturing carbon dioxide and also hydrogen sulfide, I think, from the emissions that do come from the geothermal process. So they kind of like re-inject it back in through the wells that are, the geothermal wells that usually take the energy up. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about that. And then I have a second kind of question for everyone. So I don't know if I should ask that right now or after.
Yeah, I can just really quickly answer your
Sure.
question. And also your Icelandic pronunciation is spot on.
Thanks. I really like languages, so it was
Yes. It was a really amazing trip. So I was there for a week traveling actually with different state actors that are interested in kind of the carbon management space, because Iceland is just a hub, as you said, for clean energy in general.
Yeah.
So we did also get to tour the geothermal facility, and CarbFix is a really awesome company that is doing exactly that. They're taking these kind of residual emissions, they're taking CO2 from the direct air capture plant that I talked about, and they're injecting it really far underground, and it turns back into solid rock essentially. And
Yes, that was really cool.
yeah, and we got to kind of tour like the little igloos that they have on
Yes,
the
exactly.
horizon.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
got
where
an
you get to,
insider look. Yeah.
it was very cool. And everyone from the company was really nice. And I think that they're a particularly interesting company because they've talked quite a bit about doing engagement with the Icelandic community, both the direct air capture company and CarbFix. And CarbFix is now working with some of our national labs in the US to try to bring the technology to the US. You need the particular geologic formation in order to inject in that way.
Yeah.
So it's usually like the Pacific Northwest is where that work is going to happen, like basaltic areas, ultramafic rocks, for the rock enthusiasts out there. Tina knows what I'm talking about. And so, yeah, they're actually working with some of our research scientists in the US to bring the technology here. So one of the ways that I kind of am interacting with them a little bit in my job is there's currently no like regulatory or permitting regime where we have a parallel to doing that. You know, we have the permits that allow us to like pump oil underground and pump CO2 now underground, but there isn't a class of well similar that CarbFix would be able to use to tap into. So yeah, the science is kind of evolving and traveling to the US, and we're trying to think about how we can integrate it for using our technologies. But it was very cool to visit Iceland and get to talk to those folks.
Yes. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I was only in Iceland for 9 days as well, so it was a brief trip like that, but it was so action packed. Um Yeah, no, I think, and oh, they told us when giving us like the tour of the little like igloo that it was, that usually, it's kind of like a special guest thing. It's a sneak peek, so that like, state people from Iceland and other governments, go and see this. So that's what they were talking about. And then also this is just a quick aside. I also really appreciate the like authentically showing up as yourself thing. That is very important for me for a lot of reasons, and it's kind of a make it or break it thing, in fact, in my career. So that's all good. So now I guess I can like lead into my question for the whole panelists, the whole panel. I I'm wondering if any of you have advice in general that would apply to the people who are in a position of recently or semi-recently graduating, in my case 2 years ago, and just facing kind of a long employment gap in the field. Because I have had to fill that gap with largely retail jobs, part-time, and um, in fact, after graduating, I haven't found any full-time positions, and I had a brief 1 month internship after graduating, and then nothing in the field necessarily until getting involved with NWF through the YAC. So I'm kind of curious if anyone has any advice in that position, because I really liked Tina's message about viewing it as a journey and not a destination. And I think a lot of times I view that way internally for me, but companies see worked at REI for a year, and then went to another store, and they don't see the value in that journey sometimes. So, yeah.
So I can just offer, there's unique approaches that you can take, and I think what you're describing is always a challenge of, well, we would hire you if you had certain experience, right? And that is discouraging at really any stage in your career, right? I mean, Tina and I probably, and Simone could hear it in our stage in the career. Like, it's always, tough to hear that. But I think there's ways that you can, at any stage in your career, just position yourself to, build your network and get some relatable experience. And early on in the career, and I've heard this from many, and I did, have opportunities to get different experience as I was going through school. But, you could look for volunteering opportunities with different organizations. It shouldn't be this way, but I know many people, who wanted to get in construction, for example, couldn't find a job, walked onto a job site one day and says, "Hey, I want to help. I'll work for free," type situation. And it sometimes it just takes that one little hinge moment or that one little experience to then, position you through either somebody who was impressed with that boldness, or it gave you just enough of an experience to then get you that first, real opportunity. So I would never, I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't be discouraged by that feedback. So get engaged in different organizations, volunteering opportunities, and maybe some of those, hey, I'll work for whatever, but I want to make a difference.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
I will add on to what Jason said, Estelle, because I just recently went through a round of hiring, and the position I was hiring for is for life cycle assessment engineers, and it's a very niche kind of job, and there's not a lot of people out there with experience right now. But what I will say is, like, there were a lot of so many applicants. And there were actually several that had pauses in their careers. And some of it is even COVID related. Like I could go through as I was looking at the resume. So I don't think it's as much of a stigma now as maybe it used to be, at least from a hiring manager's perspective. I think that we're starting to see that there's external factors that are contributing to start and stops within somebody's resume time period. So I'll level set you there that, maybe not all of them, but at least from my personal experience, like it's not a game changer for me. From an advice on like how, I don't know what your degree is in or where your passions are.
Yeah, all over the place. I did environmental science and policy, so not quite engineering, more the other sides of that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, but that's really broad. And so I think sometimes some of the just really depends on if you're looking more for like an industry type job or a policy type job. But there's several ways in which we intersect. And I think organizations are one great way. Like, we just went through an annual conference where we're bringing policymakers, NGOs, businesses together in one location. And we're all talking about like sustainability is an area where we want to collaborate to solve. We're not competing, right? We want to collaborate to solve the problem. And sometimes like engaging with clubs or organizations and finding a way to get integrated into some of their meetings and things like that is a great way to integrate into like who are the businesses who are like actively investing in that space right now, who you could network with and maybe start relationships with. So maybe the next time there is a spot or an opening available, like they already know, they've met you and they know you, and they would connect you to the position. Some advice.
Thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you for your questions, Estelle. I do want to be mindful it is 6 p.m. and we do have, Caitlin, I see your hand raised. If the panelists are okay with taking one more question, and then we'll wrap it up from there. It looks like I'm getting some nods. Okay. All right, Caitlin, go ahead.
Okay, so my question's kind of directed towards Dr. Stewart, unless anyone else has like any insight whatsoever. But so it's kind of a two-part question, but first off, like, how do you kind of keep up to date with the topics that you want to engage with when it comes to like the policies that you're looking into? Because I feel like there's a ton of sources that you could be looking at, and like it can get negative really fast. And then two, coming from a science background, what do you think was the best thing that got you knowledgeable about policy and like available to work in that space? Because it's like, yeah, I'm interested in policy and like whatnot, and I always thought it had to go like, you know, straight to like to law school to get into something like that. So I was just curious about what that looked like for you.
Yeah, so you're totally right. The current kind of political environment is really crazy, and updates are happening and changing really quickly. And so, part of what my team does is we all subscribe to a variety of kind of news outlets and news sources to make sure that we're covered. And so, there is, you know, Axios is like a free news kind of group that they update like minute by minute. So it's like I check my phone's dinging all the time because I'm getting updates about what's going on. I think that like we try our best to kind of find the journalism that speaks to the things that we care about. So, which oftentimes because of the positionality of groups like NWF is the center to the left. Those are the articles that are talking about climate that are really focusing on what's happening with climate policy, which is kind of the overarching team that I work on. So I would say, yeah, just like essentially following the news cycle. I get a lot of information, ironically, from social media, and I know that like for older generations that can be kind of controversial because there's a lot of conversations about like misinformation and stuff. I say, you know, always fact check your sources. Like I am a millennial, so I think that, you know, I may be a little bit more amicable to like finding things on Instagram and finding things on TikTok. Like my news reel on TikTok, it's like Labubu's and like the Trump administration is like essentially what the dichotomy of like what I'm consuming. And so yeah, I think that like really just trying to not a Labubu. Oh, David's money is long, guys. Okay. We have to talk about that offline, David. Mine is in the mail, it's on its way. um so I think that you know it's important to try and pay attention to current events, but I think also, you know, as you said, it can get negative really fast. So I think you really do have to kind of balance yourself. Like I do this for a job, so kind of when like 5 p.m. hits, I try to close the laptop and like look at all the Labubu TikToks and like not so much like the Trump is destroying our economy TikToks. But I think, yeah, being plugged into a lot of those different kind of news and public events is important, and to know what's going on like in your local community. So like living in DC, we are constantly hearing through DC outlets about what's going on, both at the federal level and also kind of locally in our city. As for the transition from kind of engineering into policy, really my experience at the Blum Center on campus was like my primary policy experience. So I don't have a policy degree. The other degrees that I did in undergrad were Spanish and math. And so I gained most of my experience through like being a part of organizations that did activism and outreach, volunteer work, and then kind of plugging in through the center on campus. So if you're on a campus or you're going to college, I would look at those kinds of opportunities to like be involved, even looking in your local community around the kinds of things that you care about. If there's like kind of like a youth for climate in your local community, thinking about getting involved those ways, because I was able to, and I saw David put it in the chat about like, you know, focusing on transferable skills. So I was able to say in my interviews when I was being hired for this role, like, yeah, I don't have a poli-sci degree. I didn't go to law school, but I do have these transferable skills from being able to talk to young people about democracy, about climate, that, you know, are going to help me translate the kinds of work that I do to talking about the climate with the general public and with our affiliates at NWF. So we have state chapters. So being able to talk to these people, and really the root of any kind of policy is to think about the audience you're talking to and what matters to them. And so, you know, being able to change the message based on what group of people you're talking to. So I don't think it has to be anything as formal as like a poli-sci degree or a sociology degree or going to law school. I think those things are great. I think they're great kind of additions, but they're not necessarily required for the job. It really is like my boss felt I had enough understanding of these climate technologies and that the policy could be learned along the way. So I think that's the other thing, and may also kind of add to what Estelle was talking about in terms of being a person who is going to learn on the job. I think is important to people who are hiring. So to say, you know, I don't know everything. This is an area that I feel really strongly about growing in, and I'm excited to learn about this at your organization. I'm excited to gain these skills at your organization. So my boss read my resume. She knew what I had a skill set in, and she knew what she was going to have to really mentor me in. So I think in 4 years, she would look back and say, wow, you've grown a lot in this area because our team was able to help you and prop you up. I was able to help you and mentor you, and you came in with this like a little bit of foundational experience. So that's kind of what I would say.
Thank you, Caitlin, for your question. I was actually reminded we are running until 6:15, so thanks, David. So we do have space for another question if there is one before we wrap up. And
I have a question for the panelists, and thank you all for speaking. Everyone's job seems very cool. I was curious how, in your experience, support for sustainability work has changed throughout the years in the industry space and also the policy space, and also what pressures you've observed that are either supporting or holding back ambitious sustainability work in your perspective.
I'm okay with taking this one first. So if I understand, so you want to understand like how investment in sustainability has changed over time, Mandy? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I can say like in my space, like sometimes I think about a large global company such as General Motors. There can be, I want to say, some cultural differences, like value. So what's valued in the United States is not necessarily, it's different sometimes when you go to like South America or you're in Europe. Policies and regulations drive a lot of that. So the policies and regulations will be different from region to region. And so you'll start to see some more localized investment, like the people in those areas where it's very important for them. So say, for example, we'll talk about like nature, right? If you go to South America, the individuals who live in that, it's very evident to them the impact on the Amazon basin and what climate change is doing. And it's very personal, very local. And so they are heavily invested in trying to mitigate some of that. And so, but from somebody who is working here in the United States, it's not as visible to them. So as a company, so we'll have a global strategy and global goals, but how we go about executing it sometimes might be very local because the needs in that region kind of drive some of that. And the investment. So we'll have a way of investing it from a global perspective, but the local operations may choose to supplement and augment that because from their own funds because it's important to them and their employees. And I say like nature is one way. The other thing we try to do sometimes with our leadership is educate them in terms of like sustainability. Sustainability actually is good for the business bottom line. So when you talk about if you're designing your product or you're designing your operation to eliminate waste. So if you don't generate the waste in the first place, which means you don't have to find a way, somebody doesn't have to take it from the point of generation, put it in a container, wrap it up, transport it from your site to off-site, either to be recycled or to be landfilled. Like all of that creates complexity and requires resources. So if you can just eliminate it up front, it's going to save you money. It's like the same thing with like shut your lights off. Like why your parents always told you, turn your lights off, shut the water off. You know, it's great for the environment, but you're also saving money. So sometimes for us in sustainability or environmental, it's about, connecting people. They don't see the full life cycle of it. They might only see a certain portion of it and not how it's affected from from the time you buy it all the way through the time it has to, gets thrown away. So our job is sometimes to make it visible to them so that if you make smarter decisions up front in terms of what you buy and where you buy it from, you're actually going to help yourself save money in the end. So I will say, the more we educate and make that visible, the company is investing more and more into it. So it might take like some capital investment. Like you might have to invest a little bit of money up front, but the long-term return on investment is greater. And so we talk about sometimes to get buy into some of these concepts, we talk about return on investment. So investing a little bit here is going to save you, millions of dollars in the long run, because of you're not going to have to manage it that way in the future. So.
If I may just add, just even from my perspective in my career in construction, it feels like really the last 10 years there's been a pivotal shift in the construction industry as a whole to really start making intentional changes in how we design and construct buildings. Many were maybe out there leading it with their own intentionality, but I would say, there's been a much broader focus on the impacts on the global climate. There's a lot of, commitments out there, like the First Movers Coalition, to making significant reductions in the cement, concrete, steel, aluminum, which are, very heavy, building materials that are used. LEED has been out there for a while now, but many weren't necessarily inspired to do that. They didn't really know what to gain them. But as Tina mentioned, what I think owners started to realize is, not only does it feel good and it's the right thing to do, but shareholders and investors care about it. And you can actually have a return on that investment if you are, creating an operational improvement that's going to have a reduction in the OpEx or the operational expense that the company has. So, but there's always going to be, in the construction space, a competition of initial cost versus the life cycle cost benefit. And I've dealt with this so many times in my role, where you have to, if you care enough about it, you have to fight for it, and you have to do it in a very intentional way, because oftentimes, and sadly, certain things can't always get approved, especially when you work for a company like General Motors that has competing priorities. So I would just say continue to be an advocate for it in whatever space you are. Learn how to receive a no as the answer sometimes, but don't give up the fight. And I mean, like I said, the shift is really, for me, the last 10 years. So the next 10 years, I hope to see, more significant improvements in how we approach things.
Yeah, I know we're close to time, so I'll be really quick. But I think from the policy space, I think everything that Tina and Jason said is totally right. Like, when we're talking about decarbonization of these like difficult to decarbonize industries, like the ones Jason is talking about, like steel and cement and concrete and aluminum, these like raw materials, there's sort of like, you have the government that is building restrictions and regulations, that's pushing in one direction. You have the private companies themselves that are meeting consumer demands, that are also pushing towards things being more sustainable. A lot of people have a lot of fear under the current administration that will abandon some of our kind of climate and low, kind of like lower CO2 desires and goals. But even thinking about the language we use, like the Trump administration feels very strongly about American competitiveness. So like, is the US keeping up with other countries? Are we innovating the same way other countries are? So I think, that's one of the kind of strategies we think about on the Hill, where we say exactly what Tina and Jason have said, of like, these things are important in the long run. If you want to beat Europe, if you want to beat China, you want to reduce emissions, you want our products to be exported globally and for people to be buying from us, then like, we need to be investing in these things in the US. We need to be deploying them in the US. We need to be setting the example and leading the trend. So I think that there's an argument to be made, even in a shifting political environment, like what we're seeing, where maybe the regulatory frameworks are not going to be as hard. There's more carrots than there are sticks, kind of thing. But I think, yeah, even in that kind of shifting environment, there's still people that are pushing in this direction. So I just echo what Jason is saying, that a lot of times we are the consumers, we're the final buyers. And so it's important for all of us to be as vocal as possible to say, we're driving things in this direction. And ultimately, big companies do and hear this. And as Jason said, you know, the last 10 years or so, even when I started graduate school, there were maybe like 2 companies that did direct air capture, and now there's like hundreds all over the world, and that's just been in 10 years. So I think, you know, we're the curve is headed in the right direction, and I think it takes both kind of government and the private sector working together, listening to what the public has to say, in order to push us in that direction. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Simone, and thank you, Mandy, for the question. I want to thank all of our panelists here today, Tina, Jason, Simone. It's been wonderful to hear from you about for you to share what you're doing as it relates to sustainability in the field and STEM education. We're immensely grateful for General Motors for partnering with us for the EcoGreen program and supporting us. And it's also just personally been exciting to learn a little bit more about your individual career paths. And Simone, I know we worked together at NWF, but you know, I didn't have any idea of the scope of your work. So it was personally also exciting to me. And also just gratitude too for you, David, for helping piece this together here in Marley. And then of course for the Youth Advisory Council. I wish we had more time to get to know each other a little bit more and hear about your interests and everything, but we greatly appreciate your participation this evening. And David, if there's anything you want to chime in before we close it down.
Just thank you, Anita, for moderating, and thank you all.
All right. Thank you all so much. Feel free to unmute and say bye. And
happy World Environment Day. Today's World Environment Day.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.